Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Take a Stand. I'm your host, Tracy Wilson, and today, people, I have got the amazing Vickie Helm with me today. I asked Vic to come on the show. Often I get her on these shows. They're sometimes short notice, and I say, hey, Vic, want to jump on a show with me today? And she says, of course. So I'm always grateful that she does that. But aside from that, I wanted Vic on the show because this particular show is about taking a stand. It's like finding your place in the world where you are actually going to be able to, you feel comfortable enough to be able to stand up and be the person, the amazing person that you are. This show is filled of inspirational, motivational, and heartfelt stories and secrets for women who have actually beaten the odds to create success across their business, family, and their life. Sometimes we'll do some upbeat stuff. Sometimes we'll kind of go in a different direction, and it might be a little bit more serious and a bit more subdue in terms of the conversation that we have. So today, I really wanted to talk about how to stand up for yourself and how we, particularly as women, can find our place where we feel very comfortable, where we can actually know who we are and stand up for what it is that we believe in and stand up for ourselves so we don't get walked over. So I want to make sure that that we cover all of that today. No better person than my good friend Vickie Helm to have on the show to have this conversation with. So welcome to the show, Vic. Great to have you here.
Thanks, Dre. I want to tell you that I love this show. I love what it represents, and I love how you run it and that you're the host of it because you're just really awesome at it.
Oh, thank you very much. Well, let's one of the things that I know, and I'm going to kind of go back into my early days of teenage years, where I know for me, I was a lot of my life I spent as being a people pleaser, right? So wanting to please everybody, and a lot of the time that came with, it's like, oh, people say you've been walked over, don't let people walk all over you, and so it took me some time to get to the point where I really truly believed in who I was. I really truly felt like I could stand up and believe in what I was about, stood firm on what I believed in, and was able to actually stand up for myself. And I know that you've had kind of a similar journey, and I wanted us to talk about those today so that we can, I suppose, shed some light on that, shed some light on some things that maybe haven't gone so brilliantly, where we've had some, obstacles that we've had to face, and then how we've actually overcome those to become the people that we are today.
Thank you. I actually want to go deep with that subject today. I want to talk about what people don't want to talk about, what's hidden, what's shoved under the covers, what's pushed under the rug, put in the closet. And I want to talk about it because these things happened to me and I watched it firsthand, and I watched what it did for like 30, 35 years of my life. And I want to make sure that when we take a stand from a level of authenticity about who I used to be and how I rose above that as well. Is that okay with you?
Absolutely. I love transformational stories.
Thank you. I want to talk about an abusive household and what it's like living with an abusive man. I know there are some abusive women, but that wasn't my experience. My experience were men were abusive and my father was abusive. And at a very young age, I saw in my mind, I said this to myself. I must have been 5 or 6 years old. And I thought, well, I have a choice. I can be like my dad or I can be like my mom. And I chose to be like my dad because he got his way all the time. And my mother got beat up all the time. And I didn't want to get beat up all the time. And for some reason, at that young age, I didn't see him beating her up is the wrong thing. I thought it was just what was in the house. Somehow you think whoever wins the fist fight, which is always the man, and very few times the woman, you realize that in this violent house, you're making a choice whether you want to be violated or not. But at 6 years old, something happened to me. I learned a belief that I taught myself, and I taught myself this words: men are bad, women are good. Women are nurturing and loving, and men are violent. Those two things kept with me a long time. I remember even in my dating years, when you're at high school and, or going to a dance or something, this story in your head of men are bad, men are violent, that follows you everywhere. And, back then, part of the take a stand thing was back then, okay, I'm going to give my age away. But you got that quarter and you were supposed to put that quarter inside your purse or your bra or whatever. So in case you needed to call and get in that phone, that public phone, and put that quarter in to dial really fast, here I am, pick me up, because men are bad and men are violent. That thing continually ran through my head. And I kind of made a promise to myself that I wasn't ever going to get beat up. If some man tried to beat me up, it would be the last thing he ever do, because he would have broken parts or whatever else. So what was interesting was that my father, who was violent to my mother, didn't want us to be in a violent situation. He really wanted us to know how to fight and how to take care of ourselves, because he was reinforcing men are violent, men are bad. So I grew up in my 30s, men are violent, men are bad, men are violent, men are bad. I remember thinking to myself, I haven't seen a good man ever, because that's what happens when men are violent and men are bad. It's the reverse also for, women are cheaters, women are, whatever you believe in that. You keep perpetuating that lie. And what ended up happening was I had no good relationships with men. I had functional relationships with men. Those are the men I worked with. Here's the report you need. Here's this back. Here's this da, 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 da. When I was 30 years old, no, I wasn't 30. When I was 27, I think it was, I was working for an author, Anderson. And, I shouldn't have said who they were. Scratch that line. I was working for an accounting firm.
Sorry, we're live.
Yeah, I know. There it goes. And I was in those gray cubicles with my accounting degree. And there was a guy and me inside this cubicle right here. And he was okay. I mean, we got along. It was all right. We were just working. And then one day I found out that he made $27,000 a year and graduated from an Ivy League school. And I made 19. I graduated from my local community college in Denver, Metropolitan State. And he was making more money than me. And right then I realized we were doing the same exact job. And the only difference was that he was a man. So I got up with this belief system inside me. Men are violent and they get their way and we support that, and men are bad, etc. I'm doing the same job and I'm not getting the same money. And I literally got up and walked. I don't think I was there for 6 weeks before I found this out. And I was infuriated and got up and walked out. And I became a police officer for a little while after that, in that stint, because I didn't know what to do. But even as a police officer, one day I found out that I made $5,000 less than the same patrolman who had the same thing, and I had kids and everything else that I needed to take care of. And I wasn't happy with that. No matter where I went, I kept blaming my situation on bad men, because there were no bad men. You see, the she myth, once it gets in you, you believe it, that it runs this silent sabotage in the back of your head. And you don't actually realize maybe it's you, or maybe you need to do something, or you just take this whole group of people and say, you're all bad just because you're men. Mm-hmm. And I know there are men that do that for women. Oh, women are bad or whatever. But in this instance, I still hadn't found what I thought was a good man. I never even identified to myself what I thought a good man did, what a good man was. I just thought a good man didn't beat up his wife, cheat on his wife, or, was, some assailant to his wife or his girlfriend, or to women in general. It doesn't even have to be just your wife. But my violence that I saw was a husband beating up his wife, which just happened to be my mom. And so I really want to talk about the hard parts that happen to you, where you think, I mean, it's easy to go in and say, well, I left because we're doing the same job and he's getting paid more than I am. That's one thing. But if every relationship you have with a man, if you see men all your life with that kind of venom, thinking that all men are violent, and so all men are bad, then you can see that 50% of the world is bad and violent to you. And that's not true. It's not true. And
So
go
what I want
ahead.
to know, sorry, what I want to know with that, Vic, is when that happened, because obviously you grew up with that belief and that stayed with you for such a long time.
Decades.
Like what happened to change that belief? Like clearly there was a
That's where I was
moment where you
headed.
were like, huh, great.
That's where I was headed. One day I realized that I had this belief, and I was kind of with my therapist, and she said, great, we need to dissolve that belief. How are we going to do it? And I said, I don't know. I'm never going to be stronger than a man. So what was interesting was I felt helpless. I didn't know what to do because I felt helpless. There are women who are dependent on a man for money and women who are dependent on a man for protection, blah, blah, blah. She said, go take a karate class. And so I did. I went out and took a karate class until I could, and I was a cop. I was like, okay, I got my gun, I got my karate, doesn't matter. You will get near me and I will, that'll be it. But something happened to me when I took those classes and those gun classes. I think every woman needs to know how to fire a weapon if you live in the United States. In other countries, you don't have it. But there's something about not being afraid of it, not being afraid of what you see, being able to manage it and knowing you can handle it. That's what flipped the switch for me, or flipped the script. Those are the things that happen. So what I realized in my life is there were going to never be any bad men ever again if I knew how. If I knew how to protect myself, if I knew how to do my own finances, if I knew how to make my own money, if I knew how to have good relationships, then when I met a man, I wouldn't need you ever. And if I wanted you in my life, then you could be in my life with me. And that's when things turned, where I suddenly had a male best friend in London. You guys know him. He was on the Coffee Break Show. Joel Young, my best male friend, and my second best male friend, John Williams, who you guys see every blue moon putting hearts and loves by. I absolutely love them. And of course, somebody would call during this time. I absolutely love them. And then my sister gave birth to men. And then, of course, there's a baby man. So you fall in love with the baby man. You're just all about, oh, men are great now. And that's how it flipped around for me. Tell me you're there. I'm going to just keep going until you get back on. There you are.
Here I am. I think I lost you for a moment there.
Yeah, it's okay. So that's how it flipped around for me. That's how I took care of the script. And one of the things that women can do to take a stand and is flip the script. Whatever you're afraid of, learn to do.
Absolutely. I mean, I talk about this a lot in terms of like building your competence. And so,
Yes.
yeah, clearly with that story that you were talking about, it was like, okay, so I'm almost, you're afraid of men, right? It was like this fear of men are bad. So therefore, I'm not going to put myself in a situation where they can harm me. So what do I do if they were going to harm me? Well, I'm going to go and arm myself so that I can actually stick up for myself. I'll either chop their legs off with my karate chop, or you're going to get a bullet somewhere that you might not want one. And here in Australia, we don't have gun laws. We just don't have that those here. So that sort of opportunity, and I suppose the way in which you dealt with that at that time was to prepare yourself so that if ever you were faced with that situation, it wouldn't be a problem because you knew how to deal with it. You knew what to do and how to look after yourself so that you couldn't be harmed, because that was what you had seen time and time and time again, which reinforced that message of men are bad. I mean,
Hmm.
thankfully, we now know that that's not the case, right?
No,
And
I
we've
have a lot of,
time is
there's so many men I love and want to thank. And I especially want to thank the men that let me, JT and Isaac and a couple of the men out there that have stood by me and let me ask all the questions. You see, I grew up in a household. There was my dad, but we had all daughters. There were just girls. I didn't have like that brother or other brothers, so you could punch them in
uh-huh.
the arm and talk about it. And so there were a couple of lovely men who stood beside me and let me ask all the questions I wanted to ask or how they felt. And, I never knew this, but there are men who grow up with violent fathers and they felt just like, I don't want to be like him. It's bad for them too. I just thought, like everybody, it'd be, they're just bad men. It's like, I don't want to be that bad. I'm a man. I want to be a good man.
Well, yeah, because that was your experience. That's what you
Hmm.
lived. And so
Yeah.
often when we live that and that's the experience that we have, we don't know any different to that. So we think that is, that is your world. That is all of the
Yeah.
world. And it's not until you sort of, you get a little bit older, you start to, you navigated
Yeah.
things and got yourself to a point where, oh, hang on a minute. That
Yeah.
was a really strange belief I had. That actually isn't quite true. And
Yeah.
and then to stand up for yourself in a way that has been very authentic and very true to the person that you are,
Yeah.
which I think is really
It's
important.
interesting. That's true, because what ends up happening is you realize that there is humanity. That's what there is. And some humanity's level of consciousness isn't isn't it's not developed. And it doesn't matter whether you're a man or a woman, both throw tantrums and both can be violent and harmful, etc. And then there are conscious people who want to love and be kind and be integrous, and that's just who they are, period. And it doesn't have to do with being a man or a woman, but just your level of, where your ego's at the time.
Yeah. I mean, we've got some comments coming through. So you guys, if you're watching right now, we are live. So hence the reason I said, oh, sorry, Vic, can't take that back. We're live. You've said it now, but
Yeah.
we are live. So that means that you're able to communicate with us. So you can message to us in the comment section below. And I can see that Larissa here is saying, this resonates so much with me. I formed that belief that men were bad and that women were weak. And for a long time, I
Yes.
was not able to build a fulfilled relationship with any of them. And therefore, I always felt really lonely.
Wow,
So
that's so
that's,
true.
yeah, yeah, it can, and someone else is saying, absolutely. I bet that would be a really lonely place and
Hmm.
really important that that you deal with this. I'm going to pull up another because there's actually a bit of conversation going on in the side chat here. So let's pull this up too. And then she's saying, because somebody else is messaging her, she
Hmm.
said, yes, absolutely. Until we know that we are protecting our vulnerability, it
Hmm.
works for us to save our feelings. But once it's realized this defense is what was blocking my connection and I actually had to change it. So a big piece
Absolutely.
of this, right, is the recognition piece. Is you recognize that, oh, hang on a minute, this is not really working for me. This is not serving me well, and it's not true. It's just a false
Hmm.
belief that I had created, a she myth that had been running and sabotaging you behind the scenes without you even realizing and recognizing it. Then you get to the point of, oh, hang on a minute, I'm recognizing it, and you do something about it. I mean, this comes down to, like, when I think about taking a stand and standing firm on who you are, there's a few things that I think are really important in us doing that. And the first is like knowing who you are. Like,
Yeah.
who are
Number
you?
one. Hmm.
Yeah. And the number of conversations that I've had with women where they've had that turning point was the catalyst. They kind of, well, there was a moment, and then they were like, hang on a minute, I really want to understand and get to know who I really am. When they started to look inwards and
Yeah.
started to really see who
Yes.
am I really, then they
Hmm.
were able to, move forward and take a stand stand in their vulnerability, stand in who they are, stand in firm with what they believed in. And then the next piece of that is like, once you know that, it's setting some boundaries and knowing, setting some limitations.
That's right.
Yeah.
I want to say more about that because I think it's so important what you just said. One of the things I learned was that it appears as though when you take a stand, everybody likes to talk about, like I have stories of being she-myth where it was clearly over the top being she-myth. But when you start she-mything, when you are actually creating, because what you focus on grows, you're going to attract whatever you're focusing on. If you're attracting, bad men because that's what you believe, then a whole bunch shows up. And you don't see how you're offending another with your she-myth that you believe. And so that whole thing about taking a stand and calling yourself out and taking a look at who you actually are and getting your beliefs in place, that's really the work for me, because it's the she-myth is something that has been placed upon us, and also some of the ones that we create that we believe. A she-myth, all men are bad, all men are violent. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And like you say, you then recognize who you are. You're starting to set some limits and some boundaries around you, because now you know exactly,
Mm-hmm.
what are you willing to accept? And
Mm-hmm.
if you're willing to accept that, then that's where your boundaries lie. That's the best you're going to get. So it's making sure that you set really good boundaries around you. And then the next is, it takes a bit of practice, right? It's like, it doesn't just happen like, oh, I'm going to decide I know who I am now, and today, boom, I'm going to set some boundaries, and then everything is just going to be honky dory from there. It doesn't work
That's
that way.
correct.
It takes constant practice and being self-aware, so that you can continue to maintain those boundaries,
Mm-hmm.
so that the fences that you create, you can't just create them once and expect them to stand forever. They
Mm-hmm.
need maintenance and practice to keep those intact and keep them strong. And
Yeah.
then the next I'd say is like knowing your rights. Like, and when
Yes.
I talk about
Thank you.
knowing your, yeah, so let's talk
Because
about
there
that. Like,
are women out there who are with bad men right now. And
mhm,
what she's talking about, knowing your rights, I want to speak to those women who are, in those abusive situations right now, and you're forgiving him, or, you're forgiving his behavior, etc. If he hasn't changed yet, he's not going to. Just like you, if you haven't changed yet, your opinion about something, he's not going to. And I want to let you know something. You need to get to a safe place. If you're in an abusive situation right now, maybe, I don't know when you're hearing this. I don't know when it's coming out. I don't know if it's tomorrow or right now you're listening, or next year, or you've happened to find this video. Whatever you're doing right now, the number one thing you need to do is just find a place to be safe, any safe house, anything like that. Then the second thing is, you got to know kind of what your rights are right now. You got to know what it is in your country about that, so that you can be safe and get the right things in order for that. And then you want to ask yourself, if you're in the situation and unwilling to leave, what your belief is and why you are participating in your own she-myth. That's super important to understand. And I get that she-myths happen to us, but we take those she-myths and we run with them. I did this men are bad for decades, and it slowed my success, slowed my progress, slowed everything down, because I was always suspicious of a man. Always. First thing, hi, I'm suspicious of you. And
mm,
that is like, that it's unfair. And I know that um, a lot of perception is that men have the advantage over women. And in some countries, that's still true. That's law. But in Western countries, you can get yourself out, make your own money. You can set yourself free. You never have to go being back to whatever you believed before.
yeah. I mean, one of the things that when we wrote the book, Vic, and we were talking about, the book is called The She Myth. So those of you who are watching, Vicky and I co-authored a book, and it's gone to, it's a #1 best-selling book, and you can get your hands on it. I'll tell you where you can get that in a moment, but it's called The She Myth. And as we were writing that, we were talking about all the she myths, all the things that happen to women, the things that you take on board as a belief, like Vicky did, all men are bad, and how long we carry that for with us to a point where we
Yeah.
think, cannot carry this any longer. We layer them on, layer them on, layer them on. And like she said, it starts to slow you down. It impacts your ability to be successful in your family, in your business, or even in your life. So we need to recognize those and then understand what it is that we need to do to be able to move forward and release ourselves from a lot of those burdens. The other thing that I'm going to say is that when we started writing that book, I got a lot of questions about, is that a woman's book? Is it, you burn the bras and all that sort of stuff? I was like, definitely, it's a book for women, but it's not about that. And we're certainly not about that. We're about collaboration. And, lucky enough, Vicky has carried on her life and has realized, actually, men, there's a lot
Men are
of good
great.
men out there. And lucky for me, I've had a lot of amazing men who have been really awesome role models in my life, but equally, I've also seen the flip side of that too. I've seen the violence, I've seen, the abuse and all those things. And they don't just stop with, like, when you know your rights. The thing I wanted to talk about here was more about, respect. Like, and it doesn't matter whether you're a man or you're a woman, but if you're a woman, and a man, you deserve to be respected.
Mm-hmm.
When you need to respect yourself, respect others, and in turn, you will
Mm-hmm.
also be respected. But when you are respected, you then start to, when you give respect and you see respect, you start to identify the,
Yeah.
the things that you want in your life and the things that you don't want in your life. And when you
Yes.
recognize when your mum was being, disrespected because she was being beat and being, pushed down as a woman and told she's not, not worthy and not good enough. I mean, they were all forms of disrespect. And so the big thing in here, we talked about knowing who you are, setting your limits, practicing this constantly, but then knowing your rights. And the big one here, like I said, is about respect. Knowing that you have the right to be respected, and you should be,
Yes.
want to give that in turn, so that you're also respecting others. And that process in itself, just that simple process there, will help you to stand firm, stand up, and then stand
Mm-hmm.
firm as to who you are. And then you can start
Mm-hmm.
making the steps to start standing out in
Yes.
whatever industry or whatever it is that you are doing, and become the role model and
Yeah.
a beacon of light for others.
Absolutely. That's the beauty of what we do here when people are on the Take a Stand show. That's the whole beacon of light. I mean, I got to say, Tracy, the thing I like about your show is that, what is it I just read? And it's perfect. It's like a lighthouse doesn't try to go find the boats that need to come to shore. It stands right there and it shines its beacon of light so the boats out there know where to come to. And that's your show. It's the lighthouse of, okay, I want something different in my life. I want to feel something and be something different. I want to make an impact. I want to make a difference in the world. I want to get my message out. I want to be who I am authentically. And there you are, that beacon right here. Just come over here and, get into this safe harbor. And when you're in this safe harbor, I want you to know you're welcome, you're loved, your message is appreciated, you're appreciated. And you just do that so often for everyone. And I've been watching all these boats coming into your harbor and feeling like I have a voice. I have a place that understands me. I have a place where I can transform and come out stronger, better. And this is something. Well, I like seeing that book. Best book I've read lately. Thank you, Larissa. That's really a nice compliment. But that's the whole point of being a lighthouse right now. And I want to let everyone know out there that, Everyone gets off course. I just want you to look up, see the lighthouse, and go towards that lighthouse right now. Get in the bay of where Tracy is and what she does with her shows and these things right here, and come and join us, because it helped me especially to unite the separation I formed between being a businesswoman and being a healer. Amen. Me too. Larissa, we have that in very much in common. There's a lot of conscious business people that are here. And once you know how to free yourself, you're forever free.
Yeah.
Once you know how to free yourself, it only takes once. Like, you learn to cook once. Here's how you make eggs and toast, and you can make eggs and toast for the rest of your life. Well, to learn how to be financially free, to learn how to get rid of the she myth, to learn to take a stand in your life and have a boundary about how you want to be treated, and building a life you love. If you sail into this harbor here, you're going to find out how to build a life you love, what's not to like. And so I think for me, one of the greatest things that I got was that men and women both act accordingly. But right now, I think there is this message in the world where men and women are working together to partner together to rebuild, rethink, reimagine, and redefine women in business, men in business, homes and families, success in children, and life. And that's everything you teach.
That message there, that just puts the hugest, smile on my face, because that is what it's about. It's about, if we can create that, I just know, I just imagine the type of world that we'll have, and
Yes.
how successful people can be when we embrace both of those. So you've sort of messaged to, or given everybody a segue in to something that we've got coming up. So I wanted to let you guys know, Vickie mentioned this, that, if you continue to follow me, you're kind of going to learn how to combine the things that you love with the messages that you have with profitable business. And that is what I do. And part of taking a stand is about you stepping up and being ready to share your message and being ready to impact other people in the world. And if that's something that's kind of like burning inside of you, I want to tell you that you want to continue to follow, because we've got something pretty special coming out in the next little while.
Oh, yeah.
In about the next 2 weeks, there's a brand new program that we're bringing out that's absolutely going to take you through that process. We've been testing this with or running people through a program that we've been doing over the last 6 weeks, and the results they've been getting have been phenomenal. They've been amazing. So we're about to open the gates, so to speak, for our next lot of students to come inside of that program. We will teach you all of the things that we've been talking about on the show today, in particular, how to take a stand. So that being said, continue to follow. We'll be back again next week with another episode of Take a Stand, 10 a.m. Brisbane time. My Thursday, I think, what time is that for you, Vic, in Mountain time?
5 o'clock.
5 o'clock. So 5 o'clock in Mountain.
Yeah, 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Western, U.S.
I got this Aussie accent that's sort of slowly becoming very kind of Kiwi, Aussie, American, kind of like. I'm hearing some of the words come out a little American. Anyhow, that being said, I hope you guys enjoy the mishmash of accent coming at you. But anyway, I want to tell you guys that we'll be back again next week. I'll be here with another amazing guest. We'll be talking more, sharing more inspirational stories, giving you some motivation, sometimes sharing something that might be a little heartfelt, that might even make you cry from time to time, but also a lot of secrets as to how these women have actually stood up for themselves. They've taken a stand, they've stood firm, and now they're starting to stand out within their business, their family, and their life, because I believe that all three of those go together. We can't compartmentalize them. You bring all of you to the table, then you hang around, you continue to watch the Take a Stand show. But for now, everybody, I want to say thank you very much for joining us. I'm Tracy Wilson, the host, and my co-host for today is Vickie Helm. And as you know, Vic and I have written the book, The She Myth. If you want to get your hands on a copy of it, head on over to Amazon.com in America, Amazon.com.au in Australia, and just type in The She Myth and you will find the book. go ahead and buy it, and you'll hear some of the things that we've spoken about today. It also gives you a whole lot of strategies and business acumen that you can find also inside of that book, so you can start living the life just the way that you want to live it. So I'm going to say thank you very much for joining, and bye for now. See you guys.